Hello, Riitta. Today I have the opportunity of interviewing you. You are a leading expert in semantic interoperability and an active contributor for the SEMIC community for many years. In your current role as Chief Specialist within the Finnish Digital and Population Data Services Agency, you are one of the driving forces behind the digitization and interoperability of public services in Finland. In this interview, we will be focusing on the European Interoperability Framework and the impact that it has on governments, public services, and citizens. But perhaps before we dive into it, could you share briefly your journey into interoperability and what motivates your work today at the Finnish Digital Agency?
Yes, I was interested in books, so I started to study as a librarian, but then my journey continued from that on, so that I was more interested in information in general, and I started to study computer science also, and after that theoretical linguistics, so that I have different kind of viewpoints to information and data, and which has been very interesting to be that kind of multitasking, let's say, person. And currently I'm working in an INVEST project that is one of the European Union projects that promotes Interoperability Act. But before that I was also working with Finnish Interoperability Platform, where we had semantic platform to help describing semantic data or metadata.
So now getting to the European Interoperability Framework, which lays a foundation for cross-border and cross-sector digital cooperation in Europe. From your perspective, how does the framework translate into practical impact for public administrations?
Well, I think that first of all, the main importance with it was that the interoperability was something else. It's not just technical interoperability, and I think that one problem is that the interoperability is thought very technical thing. But the interoperability framework explained that it's much more complicated thing, and it starts with legislation, so that it's good to have legal background. And then, of course, when you move information, you need to have processes so that you get that information moving. And then what I'm most interested in is semantic interoperability, because we have to be understand together what are the actual contents of the information we are transferring, so that in that sense it gives us background what aspects we should take care of when we are moving that information. And even though it is a high-level strategic framework, it helps us to think what are the important priorities what we have to focus on.
Yeah, I think it's a good point that you mentioned. Within SEMIC, we always view it from the semantic interoperability angle, but yeah, it goes much further to organizational interoperability, legal interoperability, and also the technical aspect. Perhaps could you explain how Finland's approach contributes or aligns with the principles of the European Interoperability Framework?
Well, I think one thing is that, for example, within European Interoperability Framework, it was the core vocabularies were introduced, and that was something that we were interested in. And also that was one thing that we built our platform, so that it is one thing that we tried to implement the framework, because I think people need tools. The ideas are good, but they are not enough, so that you need to have also tools like our platform that presents metadata, so that the people can actually see the definitions and not only talk about them.
Yeah, that is also a very good point, to make it more tangible, let's say, of the ideas that are presented within the European Interoperability Framework. based on your experience, what are some of the biggest challenges that member states are facing when they are trying to implement the interoperability framework? And perhaps also, what are some lessons or solutions that we can learn from in the Finnish context?
Yes, I think one thing is that you of course always lack money, so that if you say that okay, we have to have some kind of system, or you have to describe, you have to also provide money for that. That is something, but it's not always only money, it's also attitude. So that because it's much more easier to work in silos and say that okay, we decide everything by ourselves, and it's too complicated to work together. So it demands so that you have to think the long-term benefits in order to get all the benefits, and not only think that okay, I just do things quickly and get my own benefits, but then the others don't get that kind of thing. So that I think that Finland is a small country, and we haven't had much resources back in days, so that we had to be more smart. And in that sense, in our culture, is a bit like engineering, so that if we think that something is good elsewhere, or something good ideas, so we are open to test them. So that is some kind of entrepreneurial attitude. But of course, there is also so that you can't be like engineering only, so that that's the one thing that we have to take care, that we take people with us also. And I think also that is a matter of trust, so that you have to trust that everybody are doing their share. And we have I think that my advice is that you have to build trust, so that others they know that they can count on you, and you do your share, and then they can do their share.
So, yeah, as you mentioned, Finland is not a very large member state in terms of population, but yet very successful at implementing interoperability into their public services. Would you say that it's a combination of collaboration, as you mentioned, and also reusing what is implemented in one part of the agency, and then being able to share it with others to achieve the same results?
Yes, I think reuse is very important, because, for example, we have very good base registers. So, for example, population data register and it's quite been already in decades, so that you have something that you can build on that register and give them make new kind of digital services over with the help of that. So, but then something is that you have to have a high quality of data, and when you are doing base registers, it's the starting point that the data must be good. So that is something, and also when you have a very low hierarchy in Finland, so it's easy to agree with other people, so that there is not so much hierarchy that you have to step over, but you can discuss from peer to peer and make things work.
Yeah, that really highlights the collaboration and trust you were talking about. Perhaps when we look towards the future, and especially we can't avoid it anymore, the increasing impact of AI, do you think that AI could play a role in both semantic interoperability or even digital public services at large, let's say?
Yes, it depends on what AI you are talking about. That is something, because I already remember the old days of AI, when it was more like the expert systems, and they were small, but the problem is that they didn't scale. So that currently we have AI that is based on analytics and very heavy computing power, so that they are good to guess things, so that large language model is good, but they don't do everything. So that when you say, people say that okay, AI is coming to take our work away, so that's not true. It's a good helper, and we should use that. And I know that there are some technical persons that help use AI to create different kind of scenarios and so on. But the point is that when you have AI, you have to teach it very much. And I think that, for example, when we have ontologies and that kind of things that are of high quality, we can use them to teach AI. And then AI can give us back when it analyzes information and help us to find things faster than we ourselves would do. In that sense, it's a bit back and forth, but it's not so that you have to know what kind of AI, because there are different services. For example, I use 4 different kind of AI tools depending on what I do.
Mm-hmm. And to wrap up the interview with one last question, what is one key message that you could share with EU policymakers or semantic practitioners to overcome the hurdles in semantic interoperability?
Yes, I think one key point is to build trust, so that we need trust between the administrators, we need trust between citizens and government and so on, but also it's a matter of competencies, so that we need to build competencies for the public servants and help them to understand what kind of things interoperability and semantics can provide for them, so that they are not technical things, they are how to help people understand themselves and how to help machines understand themselves, so that and also that the semantics is not so difficult to understand, because it's something that when we people discuss with each other, we have to understand each other, so that it's more like a high-level conversation. But anyways, it's very important to understand that if you want to provide information, you have to make the information understandable. So it was like my background in library science, as they make information available for everyone, so that it's a bit like the same thing but in a digital way.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you, Riitta, for the interesting insights, and I'm looking forward to see what the future for digital services in Finland has in store for us.
Thank you for the interesting questions.